Play viewers, and welcome to the Restore Yourself podcast. I am your host, Timothy Waterman, metaphysical teacher, channel of divine wisdom, and personal breakthrough guide. Today, I'm very excited because I have a lovely friend, and she's also a certified breathwork practitioner. Her name is Victoria Antonelli. I've known her for 7 years, which still is just like, I can't believe how much time has gone by. And it's just so fun that we're still connected and that with all of this fun technology that exists, that we can actually collaborate like this, even when we're in different parts of the world. Because again, I used to hang out with Victoria back in LA. Like we would go to classes and do stuff outside of classes, and so it's just nice that we can stay connected this way. So welcome, Victoria. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Tim. I'm so excited to be here.
Amazing, amazing. And so rewinding a little bit back to where we met, we we met in acting class, and breath is actually a big part of acting. I'm sure you remember, like we'd always get notes about breathing in acting class. So it's kind of fun that all these years later that you've really honed in on the breath, and you're still an actress. And I know that you teach breath work for the public, but also for actors. So yeah, I just in this moment, I'm just reflecting on how cool it is that, this thing that was so important in class back then that now like you're an expert on. So that's super fun. And I'm just kind of curious. I mean, jumping right in, that's the fun of being live. Why is the breath called you? Why is the breath so important to you?
Yeah, so it's actually connected to acting, like you were saying. My first breathwork class that I ever attended was at the acting studio that we were both attending, AMAW in Los Angeles, and I think it was like a poster or some type of advertisement in the acting studio for this breathing ceremony. I forget exactly what they called it, but I had no idea what it was at the time. I had never practiced breathwork before. And I was just like, yeah, sure, sounds fun. Bunch of people holding hands and sharing their feelings and doing some breathing technique sounds cool. So I went there and it was very dark and there was like an altar of sorts in the middle, and sure enough everyone was sitting in a circle and sharing their feelings, and then we were instructed on how to do this certain breathwork pattern lying down on our backs. And I remember having a lot of resistance to it at first, the technique. I was like, this is annoying. I kept going back to normal breathing. I was really in my head at first, which is very normal, which I came to find out. And then there was a moment where I tapped into something, and I think hearing everyone else making sounds and crying and the teacher leading us and the music and the dim lights, everything just allowed me to drop in. And before I knew it, I was having this vision or sensation of my childhood dog coming to me and laying down on my chest. She was a West Highland Terrier named Cece. And to my knowledge, I hadn't thought about her in, years at that point. She passed away when I was 18 and I was 25, 26. So not that long before, but we had a pretty crazy, I mean, like when she passed away, she had bladder cancer and my family wasn't around, and I brought her to the vet, and she was like, not to be too graphic, but she was like peeing blood in the vet area, and it was like so there was like a lot of, and I had her since I was like 8 years old, and so there was a lot that went on, and she got sick really young and this whole thing. So of course there was some like trauma there. So it's not that surprising that it came up. But yeah, and it was this beautiful, peaceful moment where it just was like it's like my dog was talking to me. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm good. And and of course I cried, and it was this huge emotional release. And afterwards I was just like, what was that? I did that with my breath. Like no one slipped anything in my drink. Like that was just breathing. So I was pretty intrigued and hooked at that point, and I had just gotten into meditating. My mom's a yogi. I'd been doing yoga since I was in 5th grade. I remember going to my first yoga class when I was like 10. So I was very blessed to always have that in my life. But yeah, that's where my journey began. Yeah.
Mm. And what would you say, since you've been working with the breath, what has been the most noticeable difference in your life or differences in terms of being conscious of the breath, understanding more about how it works, about how being more attuned to it can be a benefit to our lives? I mean, what have been the noticeable differences since you've really honed in on the breath in your life? Just in case anyone else is listening, watching, and they're like, like the breath, not a big deal. To me, it's a huge deal. You're a practitioner. I'm just curious why, why it's important to you.
Yeah, oh my God, I don't even know where to begin. So, and I apologize, I'm on the tail end of a cold. So if you see me sipping or blowing my nose, sipping tea,
No
that
worries,
is
no
why.
worries at all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing I've noticed is that there's a way to deal, there's a holistic way to deal with emotional blocks and trauma. And it's all from inside of you. Like there isn't, I think that the biggest all encompassing thing is that everything we need, excuse me, is inside of us. And of course, we need other people, we need relationships. I mean, that's a no brainer. I mean, um, especially in recent years, we've learned that. And so I think, but it was just this idea that I was like search, especially as an actor, like I need to book this role. I need this to happen. I need this man to like me. I need like all these things outside of myself, constantly searching for that high, for that excitement. And the breath just showed me that you already know the answer to everything. We are so intelligent. We are so intuitive on such a deep level. We're so connected. And yet society teaches us to just constantly be looking outside of ourselves, and I'm far from perfect with that. I still have my needs that are superficial, like we all do. But I think that that's been the huge thing for me, is to this day, I mean, it never ends. Just connecting to my intuition, connecting to my creativity, coming back to myself. It's not that I'm changing myself and looking for, like, oh, I'm broken and I need to fix myself. I think that's in the self-help, self-development world, that can be a thing where people are like, oh, my boyfriend, my mom, my teacher, my coach, whatever, told me that, not like a life coach, I mean like a sports coach. Because I don't think a good life coach would tell you something's wrong with you. But just like we get these messages from people in our lives that something's wrong with us, or we need to fix something, or that's how we interpret it. And it's like, oh, well, I need to start meditating because I don't like myself. And it's like, no, breath work, meditation, all of these holistic practices are bringing you back to who you actually are underneath all the layers, underneath the trauma, underneath the emotional blocks, underneath the societal um, pressures. And how the breath does that is we tend to breathe really shallow um, as humans, because that cuts us off from our emotions and it allows us to bypass what's actually bothering us, what's actually going on underneath the surface, and get the to-do list done, get the kids from soccer, get this project for work done, ignore this fight we got in with so and so. So it allows us to, when we breathe shallow, we can just bypass those things. But when we actually tap in and breathe deeply into our stomach, into what's really going on, that's when we can process it and release these emotional blocks, this trauma, because it's science, it's not woo woo. We hold in our bodies past trauma that we do not process from childhood, from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. And that's, excuse me, hanging out there underneath the surface. And it's not something to freak out about because we all have it, but it's the more aware we can be and the more we can just release those layers and get really curious, I think the happier and more fulfilled of a life we can lead. And how this connects back to acting again is when I remember doing, and I've told this to my students too, or in clients, is when I'm in an acting class and I want to get to a certain emotion or a scene or on set, and I want to get to a certain emotional point, the breath is everything. You have to breathe into what's going on. If you find that you're cut off, that you're, not, you need to cry and you're not crying, whatever, it's because you're probably breathing like this. And there's like no depth. And if you can just tap in and let yourself go there, which is scary, you'll have this release that your body is like begging for. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Excuse me, I have to blow my nose.
No worries, no worries. Yeah. So, well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing those notes. And I'm just reflecting a little bit for myself because my journey going back a ways now, like 10 or 12 years with the breath. And back then, like 10 or 12 years ago, I just was so unconscious to all of this, all of the growth journey, the self-healing, all of it. I was like oblivious to all of it. And so what was the aha for me at the beginning is that I was actually, at that point in my life, I was having panic attacks. And I didn't even realize because I stopped breathing. Like I was telling stories up here that were so frightening and this is, I know this is not any news to you, but our body reacts to every single thought that we have. Like, thoughts, storylines, narratives to the body, they take them as legit. So, and the body takes the imagination as legit. Like, the body doesn't distinguish between physical threat or imagined threat. It treats them the same. This is what I've learned along the way, and I feel in my experience it is true because I see it all the time. Like anytime I ever imagine something that doesn't feel good, it's like my body starts to go into stress. But I was unconscious back then. Like I had no idea. It was news to me to be told that like when you're having a panic attack, it's because you actually stopped breathing. And I was just like, what? Like that was that unconscious that I was that disconnected from my body that I didn't even realize that I had stopped breathing. Like that was like the fight or flight. I was just like frozen, not breathing, which of course causes like, my blood pressure to rise and all of that. And so that was my wake up call with the breath. Like, and I was doing it to myself because I was imagining worst case scenarios. So those were like the big ahas for me. Like one, I'm doing it to myself with my own thoughts, that's the power of the imagination. It can be used for imagining the most wonderful things, dreams and best case scenarios. And if we're not paying attention, like, we can use it the other way, and that actually can cause a lot of stress to the body. So that was my wake up call. And then ever since then, it's just been, unfolding layers of realizing how somatically how my body works and, mind body connection and all of these things. And I'll say for me right now that like one of my core intentions in life is to stay connected to my breath as often as possible because in the nature of the contributions that I make to the world, my path of study and learning, everything's about making the most of this life, really enjoying life. And to me, the key thing that keeps coming in from all of my, guidance, universal guidance, spiritual guidance, soul guidance, whatever you want to call it, like it's from every single angle. It's if you really want to make the most of this life, be here now, which I know is a very common phrase. I mean, Eckhart Tolle, Ram Dass, they've been talking about it for decades. So like be here now is not a new phrase. And I can see in my own experience how I just really didn't take it to heart. I was like, oh yeah, be here now, okay, it's important, I get it, but not really making it a core focus of my life for many years, even though I knew about it. And Eckhart Tolle talks about like, the breath being the easiest way to stay in the moment, and other people talk about it. And I've just found that it is truth for me in my experience that if I'm connected to my breath, like I'm here in my environment now, I'm not distracted up here telling some story, trying to figure something out. Um, again, not allowing myself to go into like worries or concerns. Like that's all to me being disconnected from the body and being totally up in the imagination and some kind of stressful mode. Whereas when I'm connected to my breath, I'm in my body, I'm here now. And here now is where life can be enjoyed. It can't be enjoyed. I mean, I will say it's enjoyable to use the imagination to create best case scenarios, to create, dreams, to create future, desires. That is very pleasurable and enjoyable. And I know the response I get in my body is my body starts to feel good, excited, alive. That would be amazing. And so I do really use my imagination that way and love it and enjoy it. And there's so much more to it. It's not just fantasy, it's actually when you get into the mechanics and metaphysics, it's actually how we create our lives and create our futures, whether we realize it or not. So there is that. And other than imagining my dreams, my future desires, uh, for me, staying connected to the breath is about being here now so I can enjoy my life now because I can't enjoy it by trying to do something with the past. I can't enjoy it by trying to figure out or control the future. When I'm with my breath, I'm here now, and here now is where all the pleasures of life truly are. The smells, the sights, the sounds, the relationships, the adventures, the opportunities. And so for me, it has become a core intention to really practice. And it is a practice because it's like, it's so easy for for my mind to be like, pay attention to me. And what about this? What about that? And I'm like, oh, but I'm so aware now that I can be like, oh, okay, I see. Like you really want attention. And actually, what I want is to be here now and enjoy my life now. So that's a bit about why the why the breath is important to me. Uh, I'm curious, what would be your response to that?
Oh my God, that was so amazing. I felt like I just was, oh, I just needed to hear that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it just brought me. So as you know, I'm in a very big transition in my life. And it's so funny. I have a good friend who's a little bit older than me. And I've known her since 2014. And anytime I would be like talking to her about some like guy problems or whatever, she'd just be like, "You're in transition." And I would always be like, "How long am I going to be in transition? Why am I always in transition?" And it's like, that's life, you know? It's like if we're lucky, then things are changing and growing and happening, and that means you're alive. I think that when we get in this stat where it's, of course it's nice to be like satisfied and content, and I mean I don't know what that's like, but I'm sure that that's could be fun. um Maybe when I settle down someday I'll know what that's like, but I think that it's so interesting because, not to go too into astrology, but my sun sign is Taurus, but like I have so much air in my chart, so there's like this deep need for stability, but yet there's all these other things that are like, no, you need to travel and do these things and run around and be flighty and whatever. So I feel like there's like a constant battle in my mind. But how to bring this back to the present moment? Oh, so I was saying I'm in a big transition. So I my partner and I of 4.5 years, or former partner, just separated and or broke up, whatever. We were not married. Um, and I was in Atlanta, Georgia. Now I'm in Rhode Island. I'm about to be 33 in like a week and a half. And it's being in the present moment right now is so vital for me to like grow and actually figure out what comes next. And even, but then it's like, I don't have to figure it out. That's the other thing. It's like, I feel like I'm spending so much time on my phone or like trying to distract myself from just like sitting in the present moment and being with myself because it's sad. It's hard. There's a lot that I am avoiding, but also I've also done so many breathwork classes. So this happened yesterday. It was a month. So I've been home in Rhode Island for a few weeks now. And I've turned to the breath. I've done probably 7 full-length breathwork classes at this point. Um, and that's really helped to keep me present. I'm definitely due for one. I probably need to do one today. Um, but that is really how I'm going to grow, and I'm going to get the healing that I need from all of this is being present, being in the present moment, looking at myself, looking at my part, looking at what I desire now, um, looking at the fears that come up and looking at my ego, like how you were saying that there's that voice that's like, pay attention to me. I want to, that voice needs love too. And I've been talking about that a lot in my breathwork classes, that I think the ego is vilified so much. And it's not a bad thing. It's just, it's trying to protect us. Like the ego just wants, it's annoying, and it, you know, it gets us into, it can keep us stuck for sure if we let it. But that's the thing, is like we have power. We have so much more power than we realize, and we give it away to like the ego, to other people, to this person on Instagram or whatever. And it's, I think being in the present moment is really about taking your power back, and just knowing that this is my life. I am living for myself. This person who's telling me what to do, even my parent, like your anyone's parents, their partner, friends, whoever, even if they're well-meaning, they're not going to bed at night in your head. Like you are this is your life. You are living with the choices you make. They are not. So it's like, what is your intuition really saying? Are you listening to it, or are you listening to the ego? And that's like something I've really honed in on, and especially after my the ending of this relationship, I have had so many conversations with my intuition. I'm just like, I am never ignoring you ever again. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. And you know, that has been a huge thing for me. Um, and not because of like, you know, I don't mean that in a bad way or anything. It's just there, and and that's my whole life encompassing. That's not just the relationship or anything. That's just like in general, the amount of times I've ignored my intuition in so many areas of my life because I didn't want to be present and sit with that voice, sit with the breath, sit with that very clear, because that's the difference between the intuition and the ego. The intuition is like or so I've heard. We're still figuring out every day, but the intuition is this calm, neutral voice, and it can be, you know, there can be like a tinge of excitement and happiness, and also warning. Um, but overall, it's like it's not this like manic, like crazy thing. That's the ego is very much like, whoa, that guy over there looks dangerous. Let's run and talk to him. Like that's not your intuition. That's the ego being like, this is familiar. Go be with this person, or go like associate. Um, and just anything that is like anxiety ridden and panic, and you need to do this right now. That is the ego. Um, and so it's just like really getting clear about those two things has been huge. And I actually, oh my God, so funny. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Back in 2016, yeah, I was seeing this psychiatrist because I really wanted to be on Adderall, and he gave me it, but I'm no longer on it. It's been it's been a couple years now off that shit. But at the time when I was talking to him, he was like, And no shame if anyone needs it, just for me, it did not work out. Um, at the time, I was talking to him about, other things, relationships, whatever. And he was like, if you see a man and you feel drawn to him, just go the other way because your radar is off. He literally said this to me, and he's right. Like, he was so right because it was back then. Because it was just going toward what was like familiar and what lit up my ego. Um, and so that, like, right now I'm doing a heart sabbatical, or like a no dating for 6 months, or no anything for 6 months. Um, and it's because I'm like, I need to fix my radar. I need to get real with myself about you know, um, what is aligned with me versus what is familiar. So lots of being in the present going on over here. It's very important.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And I guess the way I was making sense of it and what you were just describing is that so when you're talking about what your ego or your trained mind, what it was being drawn to was obviously it was a very different story than your intuition. Like your intuition, to me, the intuition and my experience is always leading us towards our best. It's leading us towards happiness, fulfillment, a life of joy, love, connection, all the good things. To me, intuition is coming from that place because it's our soul wisdom, it's our soul guidance, and to me, our souls want us to have the best possible life. So there, to me, that's the direction of the intuition. Is this good for you? Is this healthy? Is this happy? Is this holistic? Whereas the trained mind, which has been trained in the Western world pretty much by society and different cultures, that's the one that can be drawn to things that, like you said, might give the conditioned mind a thrill because the mind's been taught to like get thrills out of all these different things that aren't good for us in a lot of cases. But for some reason it gets the ego is like looking for something, the trained mind is looking for something, again, like you said, it's looking for something to fulfill it or to soothe it or to like give it what it thinks it needs. And so what I was hearing is that you began to notice a pattern where like you were maybe being drawn to certain individuals where your mind thought it was going to get something out of the situation, whereas your trained mind based on all of these societal whatever was like, oh, like that person is going to give me something that my mind thinks it needs. And this professional that you were seeing was just like he was kind of seeing the pattern, like actually where your trained mind is leading you to, like I'm not seeing that that's what's best for you. So like I want to bring that to your attention, like what your mind is being drawn to doesn't seem like it's what's actually best for you. And what you found in your own experience is that like your intuition does know what's best. It's just about, are you connected to your intuition? Are you hearing your intuition? Because your intuition is going to take you towards what's healthy and balanced and holistic. So that's kind of what I was getting, is that you've seen the pattern, like, oh, this thing that was trained by all these sources outside of me, like it kind of was like conditioned to go towards drama or whatever, like thrill seeking that would only lead me maybe with dramas, kind of what it sounds like. Whereas my intuition, like, oh, this is the one that wants what's best for me. This is the one that wants to take care of me. And you're finding that you're more easily connected to the intuition in the present moment. That's kind of what I was getting. How did I do?
Yes, no, that's wonderful. And I just thought of something that's perfect. And I just thought of something to add to that, is because this was a huge aha moment for me. And this book, it's called The Quintessentials by Andrea Quinn. So Quinn is her last name, and she like emphasizes the Quinn and quintessentials. And it was recommended by a podcast I was listening to, and I downloaded on Audible. And she talks about I am statements and how everyone has 5 I am statements. that bring them back to, that are connected to who they are, who they were, or and still are as children, like what lit them up when they were little, what they were known for. Like, I am kindness, I am honesty, like whatever was like the most true to you as a child. And that's who you really are. So that can be like your highest self. And your people have the same I am statements as you. And they might not necessarily, it's not necessarily like you would have to have the same exact 5 I ams as me, but I would have to see my I ams in you. And that's how she says someone is your people. And if they don't have your I am statements, that even one of them, like if there's even one that you can't see in someone else, it's just not going to work. Like the friendship, the business partnership, the relationship is not going to work, because you're going to resent that about them. Like if they're dishonest and that's like one of your core values, one of your I am statements. I mean, that's a pretty big one in general. But and I just, and something she said I mean, that all was like huge to me. But then she was like, if you are feeling off about someone, they feel the same way about you. And so like you don't have to worry that like, oh, this person's not gonna like, I'm making the wrong decision, or person's gonna be so pissed at me, because like they might be if they're not aware, but deep down they feel the same exact way that you feel about them. Like you're also not their people. If they're not a person for you, then they're not your people. And so that really has given me closure on certain situations, because no one that like I it doesn't mean that someone I was in a relationship with or for past friendship, it doesn't mean none of them are bad people. They're wonderful people. I love them dearly, but it's like there was something that just wasn't like and it just was bringing out a part of me that I'm like, it was bringing out, I don't want to say the worst in me, but there was just something that wasn't aligning. And it's just really important to listen to that. And I think breath work, to tie that in, because I've gone a little bit off the rails. Breath work connects us to our intuitive voice, connects us to what is really going on under the surface and what we've been avoiding. So that is really, that's why it's been vital for me, and why I'm so interested in it, and why I love sharing it with people. And it's definitely my purpose, for one of my purposes for sure.
Yeah, I love that you brought the breath into intuition, and yeah, I feel inspired to to expand on that. Well, and first off, it sounds to me like what you're describing is like core values. Like if you know what your core values are, you'll know, you'll be more informed as to, again, whatever the relationship is, like you said, friendship, business partner, whatever. You'll know if it's like, if it's a match, and if you're gonna like jive on the same levels. And if you're not jiving, you know, in one way or the other, you'll probably begin to understand why you're not jiving, because there is a mismatch, in core values. And then what you choose to do with your relationship, is obviously up to you from that point. But that's what I was kind of getting, is that, like, if you don't have the same core values, like, it could cause some friction, it could cause some misunderstandings, miscommunication. Like if you're not talking about it, resentment. If you are talking about it, then maybe you can work it out. But again, each situation is unique, so you can never. What I've learned is you can't really. It can be often difficult to put, like, one statement on all situations, because there's so much diversity in this life. But yeah, just core values. If you understand it for yourself, then it sounds like to me you'll better understand why you may not be completely jiving with someone else. And maybe it's just best to talk about it. Maybe it's best to move on. But it's it always depends on the situation and what your intuition is telling you. And going back to the intuition and the breath, I love that you brought that up, because to me, my intuition, what I experience as my soul intelligence, like my highest self intelligence. It's basically a pathway between my heart and my gut. It's just like it's like that area where I get what's true for me, what's real for me, and I have so many stories, like just stories that have really changed my life forever about that connection. And it's in the body. It's in the body, and it reminds me of a statement that I once heard from another friend who I met in Colorado. And this was a statement that changed my life forever. And what she said was, feeling is seeing, and seeing is knowing. I'll say it one more time. Feeling is seeing, and seeing is knowing. What that means to me, the way I've digested it for myself, is that I'm designed to feel my way through life. That is my compass in life, is how I feel. And if you get into some of these amazing teachings like Abraham Hicks, they talk about like, your emotional guidance system. That again, every thought is going to register with an emotion and a feeling in the body, because thoughts that are not aligned with the truth of us and what feels good for me in terms of universal truth is that we all come from love. Yes, we have free will here. We can explore with a whole lot of variety of experiences here on earth and a variety of emotions and adventures and all these different things. And like our home space is love. Our home space is love. If we want to in our own free will choosing, like, sway away from the experience of self-love and love for others, if we want to go into like some other kind of experience, like, we do have the free will to explore. So even if that is the experience of not liking ourselves for a long time, we have the free will to move away from the experience of unconditional love and have the experience of not liking ourselves. And sometimes that's done unconsciously. It was for me unconsciously earlier in life. I learned how to not like myself. And so I swayed from love. But all these years later, I'm so thankful that I've had the remembrance that love is who I truly am. And that it's when I stay in alignment with love that I feel my best and I can also show up as my best in life. So we have this emotional guidance system that's always telling us, like, if you're thinking thoughts about how you're a failure, you're no good, that's going to feel awful in the body because that's not aligned with love. Love recognizes that we're here learning, we're here exploring, and we're here learning. And, whatever we explore, it's going to show us something one way or the other, and it gives us information. And we can always take that information like, okay, I went down this route, not for me, not enjoying it. It's not wrong or bad. It's just that by having this experience, I recognize it's not for me. So now I have more clarity, and I can, if I so choose, I can move in the direction of what feels good for me. That's, to me, again, the feeling our way through life. What feels holistic, good, healthy, nurturing, it's like good for our entire ecosystem. And when we do, it's good for our ecosystem, our body, our mind, our spirit, when it's really connected to that self-love and appreciation, like that echoes out. Like the better we want to do for ourselves, to me, it correlates to the better that we want to be for others. And so again, tying it back, like, intuition is in the body. It's very much in the body. Whereas the mind, and I like how you said earlier that the trained mind, which is often referred to as the ego, it's just trained with all these perspectives and all of these rules and all of these things. Again, it's not that it's bad. It's just that a lot of us are recognizing how trained it is. And, it can be very trained in fear and insecurity and not enoughness. And so a lot of us have recognized the points that it was trained to come from, and also how a lot of times it's just really not serving the purpose that it thinks that it is. So again, like, one example that I love is that there was a friend's birthday party that I went to years back, and when I went, I gave my power away in a number of ways. Like, I just like, and so I didn't have a good experience because, like, I basically betrayed my true self, just like with people pleasing and certain things at the party. And so I didn't have a good experience because I was people pleasing. A year later, I got an invitation to go back to the same, person's birthday party. And my head was like, I love this example because it just shows how like the head lives in the past. And from that protection place, like I don't want that to happen again because the last time I did not have a good time. It was like, don't go. The same thing's gonna happen. Blah blah
Right.
blah blah. Like, just find a reason to politely decline. That's what my head was saying, because based on a year ago, I tuned into my intuition, and my intuition said, go. It said, go. You're a new person a year later. You're not who you were back then. Like this is the lesson that I got. Like I didn't hear that initially. I just heard go. Just go. And I was like, okay. Like you said, to me, intuition is this is how I distinguish. The head, again, all over the place, all these opinions, like stressed out, worried, it can be panicked, blah, 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 all these different things. That's the way, like, the trained mind has been for me. And I'm actively retraining it. This is what I found. Like, we can retrain it. It takes diligence and commitment, but it can be retrained with new narratives and new perspectives. It's kind of like training anything, like just it takes time, persistence, and patience. Uh, but what I found out was I listened to my intuition. My intuition was very clear. It said go. And so I went. And because I was a new person a year later, it was a completely different experience. I had a great time. Nothing repeated itself. The only reason it would have repeated itself was if I was the same person I was a year ago. But I had grown. And so like I had a completely new experience. It was fun, it was good. And that's basically the lesson that I learned on the other side. Like you were a new person who was willing to make new choices. So this is why you had a good time, because you just weren't the person that would repeat those things. And so yes, to me the intuition is it's clear, it's concise, it's grounded, it's calm, um, right to the point, and acting in my best interest. Like that is what I've noticed. My intuition is truly acting in my best. It wants me to experience joy and to have a good life. Whereas again, the head is, the trained mind has been in like in fear, insecurity, trying to protect you based on the past and what I think is going to happen again. Um, and I just love that story because my intuition was acting in my best interest, and it showed me like, yeah, like you've changed, like you're a new person. So again, tying it back to the breath, I mean, to me, that's how I stay connected to my intuition. Like breathing, coming back to this moment, feeling in, and just like being able to like learn how to interpret my feelings. Like what does feel calm, what does feel grounded, what does feel like yes, this is the way, and it's the way that feels relaxed and good. And whereas again, the head might be like frenetic and all over the place. So breathing helps me ground, become present, and like clear any emotions that have been, because if we're really in the head, it can get a lot of emotions activated in the body. So to me, the more calm, grounded, present, relaxed I am, that's when I'm really going to hear my intuition. And again, my intuition, I feel, is going to lead me in the best direction. Um, how does that how does that land for you?
Yeah, no, I love all of that. I've had many experiences where it's something that I did in the past, and it's like a year later, 2 years later, even a month later, and it's like, oh God, I can't do that again. Oh my God, I need to get out of that. Sometimes I do, and then other times, um, I push through, and I'm always happy I did. I'm always happy that I did the thing versus not doing it. Um, and I have more on that that's acting related, but I just wanted to go back to the resentment thing because I didn't want to be unclear, because when I heard that thing in the book about the I am statements, I mean, that was at a point where there had probably been like a year and a half of like talking, trying to figure everything out, trying to make things work, whatever, therapy, all the things. So, I just didn't want to make it seem like I heard this book and then I was like, okay, now I'm gonna leave. But no, but it was just it, yeah. So I didn't want to be like disrespectful or whatever, but I just wanted to make that clear. That yeah, resentment is bad and it is definitely best to talk about things. And a lot of times that's exactly what people need to figure it out. And then a lot of times it doesn't really, I think it's good. I think no matter what, it's great to talk about things because it gives you an answer. It lets you know what's if something is salvageable or not, and then you can come out of it and be like, I tried everything I possibly could.
Yeah.
Um, so so yeah, but sorry, blowing nose again. One sec.
No
I'm
worries.
not like a cute nose blower. I'm sorry. It's
No
very
worries.
loud.
Yeah.
Um, so I've had the whole ego intuition thing come up a lot with acting because I am currently in an acting class on Zoom with a teacher that is in Los Angeles because obviously we used to live there. We met there. And I've been in class with her on Zoom since I moved to Georgia, which was like 2 years ago. Now I'm in Rhode Island over 2 years ago, which is crazy. And it's an amazing class. She's an awesome teacher and she's a hard ass. Like very she just tells it like it is and she wants nothing but the best for people and to help people and she's amazing. And I'm an extremely sensitive person and there were lots of moments where I would cuz she'll like kick you out of class, but it really just means you go again at the end of class and it's like an audition class you read with her. Um and there were many moments, and I've actually shared this with her in class, but there were many moments where I would just leave. Like I would get kicked out and be like, bye, I'm just coming back next week. So you could do that. There was the option. It was on LA time, so it was very late to be fair, but I was terrified to go up and I would just do scenes like this, like I was a robot, because I was terrified. I was so scared. And I just kept having this trauma response of like, you're gonna get kicked out, you suck, you did this last time, you're gonna and I would miss class for like weeks because I just was so afraid of having the same experience again. And and I eventually and I talked to her about it, which was a good first step. I just shared at the beginning of class. I was like, I'm terrified of this class. You know, and we talked about it, and that kind of cured me. Like, I think there was like maybe one other time where I was terrified and I had to get over that hump. But me actually going to class and doing it and not only like getting a good response and like doing the scene the right way, but just like having the confidence to be myself and like tell the truth of this character, regardless of what she said, was so empowering. And it's like I pushed through this huge fear of like needing validation and needing to do a good job and all these things that just get in the way of the art and have nothing to do with acting. And and nothing to do with any area of life. Like they're really just things that unless you're, you know, working for someone who is kind of feeding into that unhealthy childhood dynamic of like need to make my parents happy, need to do everything right. Um so need to fix my relationship with my parents with this random acting teacher. Like that's all it is when we need that validation from someone and we're like pining for their um approval. And I just had there was like two standout moments. One where I was just like, I'm gonna have fun. Like I don't give a shit. I'm gonna just have fun tonight. Because that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm an actor. I'm an actor to have fun and tell the truth and have people feel things. And um, it's not about getting it right. That's boring. So I like that was a great moment. And then I still went back into the fear and the anxiety and all that. And then there was just another moment of like, you know, you're basically just knowing that this has happened to me enough in my life that if I push through it because it's something that I love, like there's a big difference between forcing yourself to do something you don't actually like versus, okay, this is some resistance around something I love doing and I will be better pushing through. I think that's like a really hard line for people. Um, I think there's a lot of things that we kind of, because it's like, it's life. We have to do things we don't want to do sometimes, you know, but there's certain things I think we do purely for other people. A lot of things. Sometimes people's whole life is for others to make other people happy. And I think pushing through and continuing that cycle is very different than being brave and facing that fear to do something that you love, something that's aligned with you. Um, so yeah, that was how I knew. I was like, I know that I feel good. I know that I love this thing and this resistance I'm feeling. Because I went through a whole thing where I was like, I need to quit. I obviously need to quit. This is like, I hate this. I hate acting. This is like, I have so much anxiety and fear around it. I must not like it. But then it was like, again, tapping into the intuition versus the ego. I was like, this is really manic. This is panicky. This is a lot of anxiety. This is not my intuition. This is all ego coming in. And don't you just want to sit on the couch and watch a movie and be safe? You don't need to go to this class and be all stressed. So I was able to push through that and have this amazing thing. And from that, it's just like I've gotten these great auditions and I've gotten really great feedback and I just feel good. Most importantly, I feel good and I'm excited for the next project. I'm excited for the next class versus, sweating and like panicking, thinking about, what I'm going to get critiqued for. Excuse me. So yeah.
Reminds me of a phrase, and again, I know it's not all encompassing because every situation is unique, but there is this phrase that goes that I think the way I want to modify it is that fear can often be, again, because it's not universal to every experience, but fear can often be excitement without the breath. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Because I've heard stories of stage actors who have been in the industry for like 40 years, like going on stage, and they would still get like what they were interpreting as nerves before going and going out in front of the audience, and I've heard these stories of how like they learn to be like, oh, what I'm feeling is excitement. I can interpret it as nervousness and anxiousness if I don't recognize this energy for what it is. Like I can interpret it that way, and that causes me to not breathe. Or I can interpret this as like I'm excited. This is something I love doing, and like I want to, I want to give a good performance, so to say. And so like they learn to translate like oh, if I just breathe into this energy, it becomes excitement, versus like being anxious. It's like it's the breath that transforms the experience. So let me breathe, let me let this. And I feel like this is a good segue, like to really hone in on some cool um, breath fundamentals. Is that again, like there's a lot of different energy we can feel as a human being, and again, that emotional guidance system can tell us what is aligned with like that experience of love, which is to me where we come from, and what's not aligned. And again, like when we're not aware, when we're not fully conscious of different things, there's a lot of different emotional spectrums we can tap into. And whatever it is we're tapped into, like if it's something we're resisting, if it's an emotion or an emotional spectrum that we're resisting, a lot of times for me, and I've heard this from others, the way that we resist it is by like not breathing, or like you said, breathing really shallow. Like, oh, I'm feeling some energy in my body. I don't want to feel it. I don't like the way it feels. And so like a way of resisting, trying to like, keep it at bay is like starting to breathe really shallow. Or again, in my case, 12 years ago, it was like literally not breathing at all. uh, and it's through what I've learned. For me, it's that like through breathing, like really actively breathing deeply into my diaphragm, that I can allow energy to move. Because what I've learned is that, again, as we're learning, as we're growing, as we're expanding, if we do tap into some kind of emotional spectrum which doesn't feel good, well, we've built some momentum, and now we have some emotions, some feelings that have built up. We've got it going. That's how powerful we are. Wherever we put our focus, we're going to have some kind of emotional response in the body. Whether it feels good or whether it feels off, we're going to have an emotional response. So if we build up some momentum with emotion that doesn't feel good, again, it's like what I've seen most often is there's this trained response that, oh, I'm feeling emotion that I don't want to feel. I don't like the way it feels. So this kind of like conditioned response is, let me slow and taper off my breath because I don't want to feel this. Whereas what I found to be true is that if I recognize, if I become conscious enough to be like, oh, I'm feeling emotions that are uncomfortable, and now I've learned to correlate it to like, oh, what have my thoughts and stories been like the past, half an hour, 2 hours since I woke up? And then I can see like, oh, well, this is why I'm feeling this, this whatever is apprehension or um, insecurity, whatever it may be. I'm like, oh, it's because of these stories. And another part of that is like, once you see the stories that have caused these emotions, a crucial element for me has been not to judge myself, just to see like, okay, I created this emotional spectrum by the narratives I've been tuning into, the thoughts I've been paying attention to. Okay, so I created this. I've learned to be like, no judgment. This is where I am. This is what I'm feeling. The best way that I can move through this and move back to a better feeling spectrum of emotions is to breathe. To like, because, I'm sure you are aware of this, but like, this is something you hear in like the growth and self-awareness community all the time, is that like energy wants to move, like energy just wants to move. And so like if we're tapering off our breath, if we're becoming really shallow with our breath, that's a way of kind of like trying to keep energy from moving. Whereas if I just breathe and breathe and breathe, like do different things to ground myself, to connect to my body here in the moment, like that energy can move. Sometimes I know some people, they feel that they can get energy moving by going to take a run or lifting weights or going to a kickboxing class. There's all that too. And of course, that's going to get you really in your breath, because if you're jogging or kickboxing, you're going to start breathing really, really deep. And uh, so so yeah, to me, that's been the key thing, is this is seeing how important our breath is to our emotional spectrum. And again, going back to the example, like a lot of these artists recognize like, okay, I'm feeling like this kind of like adrenaline, like this high energy, I'm about to go perform. Well, if I just choose to interpret that as excitement, and that lets me breathe, okay, now I'm breathing into the excitement, I'm letting this excited energy move. Whereas if I'm like, I'm afraid, what if I mess up? And now that goes into fear, and the fear causes the breath to be like, and now energy's not moving. So like I'm just painting a picture of like energy not moving as opposed to energy moving. It's two different worlds if you ask me. So what have you, I'm curious, like how does this relate to you, and is this something that you see as a teacher? Do you see a lot of this, like a lot of these experiences that I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. Okay. Blow nose break. One
Okay,
moment, please.
no worries. Yeah, gotta gotta take care of yourself as you're
Thank you.
recovering.
Oh my God. It's like my energy is fine, obviously, but it's
Yeah,
just getting
yeah,
getting it out.
yeah.
Excuse me. So thank you for sharing all of that. Oh yeah, I see so much in my classes and with myself of people who come to my class. They have no idea what it is, much like how I was my first time. And they have this incredible experience where they're either crying. Um, Most commonly, it's like people are either crying and they don't even, a lot of times they don't even know why. And it's just things that like they'll have a vision or they'll connect with someone they lost or something that, or they'll just have this random memory pop up. And a lot of the times it's these repressed memories that are still there, still under the surface, and we don't even know that they're kind of like wreaking havoc on our psyche in a way. Um, and it's just people are a lot of times kind of confused at how that can happen from the breath and how they needed something so badly that they didn't even know they needed. And it's an honor to gift people with that. And the other thing I see is, or help people help themselves to get to that point. Cause I'm just up there kind of guiding and they're doing it, you know, it's like, I'm not like pressing on their chest and stomach and helping them breathe, you know, it's their journey. It's however far they want to take it, however much they want to commit. Cause there's also people that are fidgeting the whole time and not really wanting to do it, or they'll just, because the breath pattern I teach, it's 2 inhales, 1 exhale all through the mouth. And sometimes people, they just won't do it, or they'll like breathe out their nose, and I am never offended because it's like, that's where you're at right now. You know, I've been there. I get it. And it's like, come back again in 6 months, you know, or try a different facilitator. And not everyone's style works for you. And the other thing I see is people who, it's funny, it's usually people that have just had some type of grief they've experienced, or they've been crying a lot already. And they're like, oh, I know I'm going to be a mess in this class. And instead, they're overjoyed. They're happy. They're relieved. And they're like, what happened, Victoria? I want to have this big release. I'm like, you've been releasing. Your body wants to be happy. Your body wants to feel good, you know? And so that also can happen. And no matter what, people usually feel, if they're fully committing, you're going to feel a level of like relief and relaxation after. What can also happen is if you're kind of holding back, not really sure about the technique or whatever, you might still feel that heaviness after because you didn't allow yourself to release. Your body didn't allow you were scared to feel certain things. And that's okay too. There's no wrong way to do it. Whatever experience you're meant to happen, you will have during that session. And it's just about letting go of expectations. 1 second.
No worries.
I am so sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I understand.
It's just about letting go of expectations and trusting that your body, your intuition, your higher power, I think it's all kind of the same thing, knows what's best for you, not the mind. The mind knows the past. The mind knows what's familiar. The mind is doing everything in its power to keep you on that couch, eating chips, watching TV, because you are safe on that couch. But you're also probably bored, probably eventually. It's fun for a little while. You know, we've all had a Netflix bender. But after a while, it's like, I want to get out there and do something, you know? And I think that, and how do I bring this up without, this is a bit of a controversial topic, but I just want to say before I bring this up that, like I was saying with Adderall, if medication works for you, antipsychotics, anything in that realm for depression, anxiety, etc., go for it. That is 100% your choice. I am not anti-medication. And what I will say, as someone who has been on Adderall and tried different things, there's like a numbness that can come from taking certain medications and I think that anxiety, that especially anxiety, that depression, these different things, there's signs, or they can be, not always, signs from our body that something is wrong and something needs to change and we need to look at something. I would say that's probably always the case. It's like, something's not right over here, pay attention. And when we take certain medications, we might be numbing that out. And so like this desire to get up and do that thing we love and have that conversation and do the really hard thing that stresses us out, but is necessary, can kind of just like flatline a bit. And and then we become happy in this place that we're not actually happy in. And we're just kind of like tame. And I believe that your propensity to feel like the really painful emotions, the same propensity that you can feel the really amazing emotions. So if you're just like numb, you're not feeling anything. If you're just like there, you're not getting these really highs, and then you're also not getting these real lows. And it's like, yeah, to an extent, you don't want to be, like this every 5 minutes, but I don't know. But I just think that, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but I think that there's this alarm system that is like, okay, it's time for change. You got to do this thing. It's time to expand. It's time to grow. It's time to, like, this is what lights you up. Like your intuition, your higher power is coming through, trying to help you. And if we're doing anything, drinking, overeating, like it doesn't have to be medication. If we're doing anything to kind of like numb that out, then it's going to be a lot harder to hear our intuition. And I'm someone who I tend to, I like to, like, I was on Adderall. I like the uppers. Like, I'm like, all the coffee, all the caffeine, like, let's go. Um, and also someone who overeats. I'm an overeater. So it's like all these things, it's like, it's just trying to regulate myself with um, outside things versus getting calm, sitting with those emotions, sitting with the breath, sitting with what's really going on. It all comes back to that. And we have so many things at our fingertips, social media, to distract us, to keep us in this little bubble. But it's like, as far as we know, this is the one life we have. And it's like, how do you want to spend it? How do you want to spend this time? It's just, I don't know. Like yeah, I think about that a lot, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, it sounds to me just you're just emphasizing the importance of the intuition and how it does want to lead us to our best outcome in life, the happiness, the enjoyable, adventurous life. And and one of the things that I when I hear you say like do the hard things or like, the way you said it earlier was, do things we don't want to do. I guess a way that it translates for me is that what I feel is that on some level we actually, well, on a deep level, we actually do want to do it. So when I hear like, like, oh, we have to do things we don't want to do, the way I expand upon that is there is things we truly don't want to do because they just don't feel good. And again, like not a match, not exciting, not in alignment for us. And then there's things that we do actually want to do that bring up some insecurity, you know, that invite us into expansion and growth. And so when I am reflecting on the experience you described earlier with that class, what I heard you describing is that on an intuitive level, you did want to keep going with acting. Like that was your deepest truth. Like, I do want to keep going with acting. But you were having to face some insecurities, insecurities of like, again, like, I want to do a good job. I want to get it right. Maybe not fully understanding how to deal with someone that was so intense as you described, like, someone who has a very intense energy. And so it's like, what I was hearing is that no, you did want to keep going down that path, but that path was asking you to to address some insecurities. And and that's what can feel challenging is, like, oh, like my intuition is saying like this is the path, and this path is causing me to look at things, like where I don't feel good enough, where maybe I feel like I'm getting it wrong, um, where I'm not standing in my power. Because like I'll tell you as well, it's like this has been a very valuable experience for me. I've taken classes where I've been told to do things and they felt uncomfortable for me. And not uncomfortable in the sense that like I was scared, but they really just did not feel in alignment for me. And so to me, it was a really valid experience to stand there and tell the teacher, like, no, this does not feel good for me, it does not feel okay for me. And not just to be a people pleaser and be like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Like, like, because like teachers are teaching what they know and they have their methods. And I've gotten out there and taken a lot of classes. And one thing that I've learned is not to give my power away to the teacher just because they do things a certain way. Like if they want me to do something and it crosses a line for me, like to me, it's very powerful to like say, like, I know we're in this class scenario where you're the teacher and I'm the student, but actually we're two human beings and what you're asking me to do, it crosses a line for me. So no, like to me, that's facing an insecurity and learning how to stand in my power because there can be any number of situations in life where someone is, like you said earlier, like telling us what we need to do. And it may not be a fear, maybe it's just crossing a line. And so to me, it's very powerful to be like, I don't care what the situation is. I don't care that this is a class and, like, no, this crosses a line. No.
Right.
And so like I've learned a lot by that was a way of me facing insecurity, recognizing that I don't have to give my power away to whoever. Like if it feels like it's crossing a line, I can trust my body and my intuition. And then, it's not like, again, like that's the difference. The intuition is not just like blah, 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 blah. The intuition is just like crossing a line. No. And
Right.
by me learning to listen to that, like I have saved myself from going through experiences where I would have just had an awful time because I was betraying myself in a sense. And so again, like just tying in the breath, I know we're talking so much about intuition, which is amazing because again, feeling our way through lives, and that's everything to me, feeling. And the way I stay connected to the intuition, the feeling is just by relaxing and breathing in the moment. Like, okay, whatever is coming at me, because if we're not, in my experience, if when I was not trained with the breath, if something's coming at me that felt intimidating or intense, in earlier phases of life, I would go into the head and be like insecure and people pleaser, like, okay, okay, just say okay, just to like mitigate any like uncomfortable feelings. Whereas like now, if something comes at me and it's like it feels a certain way, I can stop and I can just breathe and like feel into my body and just like take a moment because like that's how powerful we are. Like we need to take a moment to really like compose ourselves, even if it's just like give me a minute. I don't know what to say yet. Like we can be in our power and say I need a moment to really like take this in, and then just like from that place, just what is my intuitive response, like what is my truth in this moment. And that even comes up into classes too, like where I've been working with a like some kind of a partner in class, and like there's like this behavior, and I learned how to like be in my power and be like something's off here, like something's off here. I don't understand, like I don't understand this behavior right now. Like before we go any further, I feel like we need to talk about what's really going on in this situation because just the whole thing feels off to me. And that's all come as a result of learning how to stop, breathe, go down into my gut and being like, how do I respond? Like, how do I respond from like a grounded place? Because again, to me, that's different. It's like the mind is the reactive one. It's like, blah, 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 blah. Like I just, I want to mitigate any like uncomfortable feelings. I want to like people please, blah, blah, blah. To me, that's all from the head. Whereas in my gut, when I slow down and I breathe and I just come into my gut, I can stand there and be like, instead of like pretending nothing's off, I can be like, something's off here. Can we please talk? Because I feel uncomfortable right now. And I don't think I'm going to feel comfortable until we talk about like, because, we can feel when there's emotions under the surface are saying one thing, but we know like the meaning is different. Like, so connecting to the breath, being in my power has given me like the confidence to be like, we need to talk because something's not right here. Um, so yeah, I'm just bringing this up as just a testament to like stopping, breathing, anchoring, and really, to me, it is a practice to learn how to hear the intuition and knowing what it feels like for you. I know we both describe like calm, centered, like straight to the point, wanting what's best for us. And so to me, that's the power of getting to know your intuition, what it feels like for you, and just breathing. I like that, breathing, uh, breathing has been my gateway into more empowerment in my life. And just, empowerment from like a sincere, heartfelt, grounded, respecting myself and respecting the other. Because it's not about just, like, it's not about like telling anyone off. Like, that's not what I'm saying. It's about like being true to yourself in the moment. So again, like whatever's happening, like my grounded truth was, can we please talk? This whole thing feels off to me. It feels like we're misunderstanding each other. It feels like we're like, bashing heads, so to say. Like, and in class, like telling someone like, no, this is not okay for me. Like, so that's what I'm getting at, is like the grounded, resonant, like respectful to self, and knowing how to communicate it respectfully to others is also a skill set. But to me, it's like my breath is my gateway into that. So, how does that land for you?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm inspired by you, by that you're able to do that and recognize that and take the pause. 1 second. Okay, last nose blowing.
No worries.
Um, excuse me. So yeah, that you're able to take the pause and stand in your power and be like, what's going on? Or no, like that is something I am really working on, because I probably has some type of, well, definitely is some type of trauma response. I tend, when someone like yells at me or gets really upset with me, or there's any type of conflict, even if it's, more passive aggressive or whatever, um, I tend to go into like freeze mode and my brain like literally doesn't work. So I have really been focusing on how to connect with my breath and get to that place where I can be like, no, let's talk about this. Something's not right. Versus just, not even being able to find words. And something that I have gotten really good at, and I think this is a testament to the breath and being able to stay calm and see my part in it, is if someone does make kind of like a passive aggressive comment, or if I do think that something I said offended someone, I'm able to like pretty immediately go up to them and apologize and ask them about it and just be like, instead of this, like, because I just hate that awkward feeling. And it's like, maybe they didn't care, maybe they didn't notice, but it's like, I want to clear the air and I want to make sure that they know that I am an aware person and that they can tell me if something bothered them, and that's okay. And I just want to always create that space for people that it's safe to talk about things. It's safe to let me know if something bothered you, even though it's uncomfortable. And that's definitely a new thing for me. And yeah, that's been huge. And to just like look past my own, oh, did she really just say that? Or, oh my God, and like this whole ego thing of like, let me just ignore it, or let me go talk about it with someone else or whatever. It's like, no, I'm gonna go right to this person right after it happened, and I'm gonna say something. And I actually just apologized to someone at a wedding about something that happened almost a decade ago, and before that, prior, because it just it had been on my mind, and I just was like, I want to clear the air. Like, I want to say something. And it felt really good to be able to do that and be that person now, instead of the person who was like scared of conflict and hiding. And um yeah, I think that has been so huge in my journey. And the breath has 100% helped with that. And also the idea of like, you're not going to die. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen is this person like tells you to F off or something. And it's like, okay, well, you know what? I tried. It's better than just this like low line, this like low grade, or like awkwardness or uncomfortability, or just, I just want to be in integrity. And just, I think that's so important. And I just thought of something else and it slipped my mind that I was going to say. It'll come back to me. But But yeah, I think that being able to face conflict and have it, or just say what you mean without saying it mean. Oh, now I remember. So I'm in a 12-step program called Al-Anon, and one of the steps, it's very similar to the AA steps. It's like a similar format for all the 12-step programs to my knowledge, is you you make amends to people. Like you go and you apologize to people who you have wronged. Like that's one of the steps. And I remember, and I've been doing the steps for a very long time and like procrastinating so hard. But I remember when I first came into the program, I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do that. I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. Like I'm the one that's been wronged by everyone. And it's like I've even though I'm not at that step yet, I've gotten to this point where I've already kind of started to do it and get really comfortable with doing it because it's and that might change if I do apologize to someone and they're like F off. But as of right now, I've had a positive experience so far. And yeah, I think it's really it's just about facing fears and knowing that you're not going to die. You're not going to die because you spoke up for yourself for because I mean, in most cases, um, it's like these things that we just put so much weight on, and it's like in a year, are we even going to remember that happened? So it's just really having this like whole, just like growing the perspective on life, I guess.
Mm. Mm. And the through line that I'm just getting for even just the communication aspect is just like to breathe. It's like there's a communication scenario happening. Again, if there's like insecurity, resistance, it's like it's the not breathing that might make it, that my experience tends to make it that much more complicated, is like not breathing. And so again, it's just like breathing, centering, grounding. What I mean by grounding is really coming into the body and breathing, so the body can be relaxed. Because to me, communication is so much more effective and easy, like when I'm in the body, when I'm breathing and anchored in the body, as opposed to like all nervous and preoccupied, up in the head space. So it's like just breathing, and also just another thing I found. I know we're getting close to the end here, but one thing that I've just found, and it's been really helpful in communication scenarios and learning the difference between reaction as opposed to responding, is that there may be times where a certain situation brings up a lot of emotional charge. It's like um, it can happen both ways, where something is said to us and it just touches a sensitive spot within our emotional body. And because that spot has been, touched, so to say, or activated through language or whatever has activated it, a perspective, a statement, whatever is activated that spot within us, when that spot is activated, a whole lot of emotions can be come up like to the surface immediately. And one of the things that I learned to do a few years back was just to be like, okay, I need to walk away because I have a lot of emotion that's come to the surface right now. Like this conversation has just activated a whole lot of emotion. So I need to walk away. And we can, like if it's a person that really cares and respects the relationship, just be like, we can revisit this later. I need to go take care of myself. And so what I've done is, like literally walked out of the room, gone into another room, like shut the door, and like I just stand there and breathe, because it's like I know that's what's gonna let the emotions, like the flood of emotions, like release and move through, is like me just like breathing. And it can, it hasn't happened in a while, but I remember maybe a few years back where it was like you're like really just like deeply breathing to let these emotions like come up and out and come up and out and come up and out. And I know that's an experience that a lot of people have in breathwork classes, because I've been to a number of them in different spaces. And it's like, sometimes, like you said, in a class, it can be like years. I mean, for some people, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like decades of like suppressing an emotional wave. And it's like when we deeply breathe, it's like giving permission to the body to finally like move that emotion, what feels like to me like up and out, up and out, up and out. And once it's gone, it's like it's released. I mean, I know there sometimes can be like certain echoes or fragments of whatever that response was that can still, kind of be there and they can release in their own way. But a lot of times, like the big one can come up and out when there is that permission, that relaxation, that connection to the breath. And that's why, like I said, it hasn't happened in a while, but the last time it did happen, it was just like, I need to go take care of myself, so I just like breathe and breathe and breathe. And the emotion came up and out, up and up, up and out. And then, I don't know, maybe it was like a few hours later, I was like, okay, I can talk about this now, because I let all of that energy that was activated in me, like, just clearly and cleanly move up and out and through. And now, like, I feel like I can talk about this because I'm not, like all these emotions aren't activated. And so me coming back later was, okay, now I can talk and respond in like a calm and grounded place. Whereas before, I totally would have been in reaction. And I just know for myself, like reaction is not going to move the situation in any kind of like helpful direction. But I've seen that, and I've seen people have those experiences in breathwork classes. And I've taken a couple of your classes virtually because I know that you offer them virtually. And I remember just some of the things that you've said, in the beginning of the class, to people like, put yourselves on mute and, like you're in your own space, you're in your own living room, on your floor, your yoga mat, whatever. So like if you need to like just like, let some stuff out, like exhale, like, like even like, scream something in your own living room just to like let some emotion out, like you can do that, just put yourself on mute and like let the emotion out. Uh, and yeah, and just it's like what I've seen for other people is that, typically on the other side of letting that emotional wave out that they've been holding on to for so long is like there typically is a deep relaxation on the other side. And when you're in person, I know that like the facilitators can, kind of walk up to people and sometimes guide them through those experiences. But yeah, if we're doing it virtually, it really is to a large extent about self-care and, again, just making sure you're in a safe, stable place, like flat on the floor if you're gonna like, really, like scream or something. But yeah, it's like that's been my key for handling what we call confrontation is just knowing how to take care of myself. Again, creating the clear communication. Okay, I'm activated. I'm taking responsible for my emotions. I'm gonna go take care of myself. Let's talk about this later when I'm at a better spot to do so. And that's what's been really helpful for me. So again, I know I know we said about 90 minutes. I want to respect your time, but anything you wanted to respond to that with?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that being it's tricky because like being reactive and saying that thing, it feels good in the moment. You're like, yeah, well, you did this. And but it's like you never feel great after. And it's a lot of it is about breaking habits and rewiring the brain. And I've been thinking about this a lot with my journey with food, my relationship with food. I mentioned earlier, I tend to emotionally eat and overeat. And it's like I expect one day I'm just going to wake up and it's going to be healed and I'm going to just like be like lose 15 pounds or like whatever. But it's like, it's a habit. Like I'm in a habit of eating when I feel a certain way and like coping with my emotions with food. And it's like I'm gonna have to rewire these neural pathways in my brain that are like, you're sad, go to the cupboard, or like this thing happened, you need to, oh, you don't want to, you want to avoid doing this thing you have to do, go eat a cookie, whatever. And it feels great in the moment. It's like, oh, thank God, there's still some Reese's cups left in the freezer. But it never is worth it ever. I mean, yeah, of course, enjoy the treats every now and then, blah blah blah. Not about restriction, but it's like when you're doing it out of that place, like it's like the intention behind it is everything. Like when you're out with friends and you're having fun, you're like having some cake, whatever, but it's like I need this to deal with my emotions. That's like not, and it's the same thing with reacting to someone. It's just this habit you're in of like not being nice and just saying that really mean thing to like to hurt the person because you're hurt. And it's just in the moment it's so like there's been times where whether it's going against a reaction like don't send that text or don't eat that thing where it's like a little brat. It's like this little brat child because it is. Little Victoria is like no, and it's like this angry like scream like just this really intense, really intense like crying like just brat that comes out. And but if I can get past that, it's like this euphoric just calmness and just this ease and just like it's I could just feel my intuition, I feel my higher self like okay, good job, you're gonna have to do that again next time, and eventually it becomes a healthy habit and it becomes just that neural pathway is built and you can start to like and this other one dies because you're not going down the yelling, the overeating, that route is not there anymore. You haven't been entertaining it, you can just keep going up this healthy route. And shit happens, life gets hard, and you're gonna have this little, it's like people who smoke cigarettes. Like I used to smoke cigarettes in like college or something, and for years after it would still be this like urge to have a cigarette, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that. So it can take some time, but it's like in those moments just continuing in this new neural pathway. And the thing you were saying about letting yourself feel the emotions underneath and just breathe, that reminded me of when I was as you know, I did a 10-day silent meditation vipassana, and you're not talking to anyone, obviously you're with other people, but you're just in your own little bubble, or you're supposed to be, but you still get triggered by people, even if of course they don't mean to, but it's like certain things will happen. We're all human. And I would feel this like rage inside of me. And all I could do was just because there was this little pathway behind where we were staying. And I would just walk down the nature path and like have my hands out by my side and just breathe. And I would always cry because it was like there was like a sadness and a hurt underneath that anger. There was just like I'm being taken advantage of. And like not being able to talk and stand up for yourself was like kind of a good thing in that situation, like because it was all me projecting things. Like this person, like I thought someone took my seat at lunch, and I had this like I was so upset by it, but it was like no one took your seat. No one cares about no one's like worried about you. Everyone's on a silent meditation. And it was just this triggered thing from my past where someone took advantage of me or took something from me or whatever. And it was resurfacing in this situation. And it was 100% me to deal with. Like, thank God I couldn't say anything. Like, that would have just been embarrassing. Um, it was just purely for me to deal with my attachment to inanimate objects and to anything that brought me comfort. Like having that seat that I sat in every day brought me comfort. And this person sitting there was like, you're ripping away the one thing I have in this situation that is comfortable. But it's like that's kind of the whole purpose of the meditation is like getting releasing attachment. Attachment brings suffering and pain, just like a whole other conversation. Another thing I wanted to bring up is like, because you were talking about the panic attack thing earlier, I'll make this very quick, but another big reason that I got into breath work is because I, from when I was very little, like I honestly think I might have been like under two, I had my first panic attack, and my parents were actually talking about it the other day. And I stopped breathing in the middle of the night, and they brought me to the doctor, and the doctor was like, yeah, it's anxiety. And it's like, why does a 2-year-old have anxiety? Um, Still haven't figured that. I mean, I have some ideas. And then it happened later on when I was probably 6 or 7, and the doctor just told my dad to bring me outside and like hold me up so I could like breathe in the night air.
Mm.
So that happened. He did that, and I was fine. And it happened again in college. And I remember finally talking about it myself with the doctor when I was living in San Diego. So it was like 2014 or 15. And the doctor was like, yeah, that's anxiety, because I was like, I would stop breathing, and then I have to take this really, really deep breath all of a sudden. He'd be like, why? Like, is there something wrong with my lungs? Like, what's going on? And he was like, no, that's anxiety. And that was like when I saw breath work in that acting class, it was like that kind of a light bulb went off of like, oh, that's the thing that, I need to work on. And I do notice when I am practicing, I can't even remember the last time that's happened besides being sick, where I have had to take a really deep breath because I wasn't breathing. And I think that a big part of that is because I practice, and I'm consciously breathing deeply, and I am so much more aware of my breath. So, and that affects my anxiety. Breathing deeply helps me to not be anxious. So it's like this circle where it's like, okay, if I'm focusing on my breath, I'm like, my mental health is just in so much of a better place, and everything else aligns. And I even heard something recently that breathing wrong, so there's a thing called reverse breathing. It's like how you're supposed to breathe is that when you inhale, your stomach expands. When you exhale, your stomach contracts, or your diaphragm. And some people do the opposite, where when they inhale, they're like sucking in their stomach, and when they exhale, their stomach's coming out, and it's called reverse breathing. And breathing wrong and it's usually a trauma response of some kind, and it can actually cause inflammation in the body.
Mm.
And I don't know the science behind that, but I just thought that was really interesting. So there's, on every level, breathing properly and breathing fully and deeply will just make your life so much better. And I teach the technique I teach is 2 inhales, 1 exhale, all through the mouth. But every other way of breathing, whether you're exercising, sleeping, going about your daily life, breathe through your nose. 100% breathe through your nose for everything. If you sleep with your mouth open, breathe out your mouth, put tape on your mouth. It's a whole thing. It's so good for you. There's like this mineral that's released in your brain that helps your brain to recover when you sleep, that you can only get if you breathe through your nose. Bunch of crazy science behind it that I won't get into, but there's a great book called Breath by James Nestor. Highly recommend. But yeah, the reason why I teach through the mouth is that it connects you to your emotions in a deeper level, and it also keeps it more active. So you're not like falling asleep doing the breath pattern. But other than that, breathe through your nose.
Mm. Gotcha. 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 Yeah, I've heard, I've seen some pretty renowned like people that teach breath masters, like these high level athletes and stuff, talk about the nose breathing too. And yeah, I've heard them give the reasons. So, uh, so yeah, I mean, it's just it definitely there definitely is. Yeah, I've heard this kind of talk before. So, but obviously, we all have to. I mean, I've experimented with different things. We always obviously have to find what works for us, and but just know that there's options. I feel like that's what I'm getting. It's just there's options that we can explore if we so choose and find what works for us. And but I do often think about that when I'm like on a walk, or like even as I'm sitting here right now and you're talking about it, I just recognize as I'm listening to you, I am breathing through my nose. So 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 yeah, obviously it's just like just know that there's options. And obviously I think what I just advocate for is like we all have to find what works best for us. And so yeah, I mean that's like the one thing that I always bring up in the work that I do is just, like listen to yourself, find what works best for you. There's all of these great um, offerings and inputs and perspectives and ideas about how we can play with different options in our lives. And I just always advocate for like come back to what feels good for you. So so yeah, because it's just how important it is to us too. Like not everyone is going to want to play with like the tape across the mouth thing, but it's like they might want to like throughout the day just like pay attention and just practice coming more into their nose. And so I only just bring that up just because I know that we are in this information age. There's just so many offerings and inputs, and I just like to always advocate for like, and like as we've been talking about, like, and always listen to your intuition, um, and what feels right for you. That's just something I always say. So no matter what the topic is. So because I just I'm all about self empowerment and just recognizing we always have the ability to choose for us. Uh, and so there's one thing that came up as I was listening to you. Just just summing up. Yeah, it was just essentially just the rewiring. Like and the responses to different stimulus and maybe some certain outside stimulus that puts us into kind of like a triggered reactive space. That's for me how I have been rewiring, as you were talking about, is that because there's different things that will like that I know for me, if I'm feeling a lot of emotion, that will help me like self-soothe. And obviously I don't feel there's anything wrong with self-soothing. It's like just um, again, and it's up to us whether we realize that our self-soothing is doing more harm than good, or if it actually is good. So for example, one of the ways that I self-soothe is with music. Like I'll put on like calming, relaxing music, and it's beautiful, it's helpful, and it's been a go-to for a long time. And in terms of the rewiring that you were talking about, what I've been doing is that I've been practicing with, well, like, okay, what I want to do right now is put on music and, like my headphones on and soothing music. And there's nothing wrong with that if I were to choose to do that. Because, obviously it truly is like harmless. It's like listening to music. It's not like anything that's going to have like an after effect, that I'm going to regret later. But
Right.
I have been playing with just like, okay, what I want to do right now is put on music. And if I were to choose it, there's nothing wrong. But what if I just sat down and breathed? What if I just sat down and really breathed and like looked around and became present and let my body relax my mind? That's the most common thing I've heard with connecting to the breath is, I've heard Eckhart Tolle speak of this, and I'm pretty sure it's like well known in kind of like the Buddhist tradition is that the mind follows the pace of the breath. So if the breath is short and fast and in the chest, like that tends to lead like a very busy spiraling mind. Whereas if we're relaxed and breathing deeply into the stomach, the mind follows the breath, and so the mind starts to slow down. And so that's one of the ways that I've been rewiring is like, okay, I kind of want to like go make a cacao right now. I kind of want to like listen to music. And what if I just sat here and breathed? And I do have to say, it really it's worthwhile. It works, and like you said, it's using the resource that's within us because the breath is couldn't be more deeply in us. So that's what I found empowering is that like within my entire vessel, my own vessel in and of itself, I do have the tools to regulate and bring myself into a calm, centered, present space, all with the breath. So I feel like that's the perfect note for me to end on. Anything else that you want to say before we close out? I will just mention that one of the nice things about being live is that you can find Victoria's information in the description. This is on YouTube. This will stay on YouTube. It's also going live on Facebook. The full description I definitely know is on YouTube. So like just Victoria's LinkTree is in the description, and her Instagram handle is in the description here on YouTube. So just know that that's already there. Again, that's a nice thing about being live is that I can pre-populate the details. So if you like to connect with Victoria, beyond this interview, just know that her information is already in the description here on YouTube. So that is there. And but yeah, before we close out, just any final sentiments or notes that you wanted to share, Victoria?
I don't think so. Yeah, just agreeing that there are things that you got to listen to yourself. So whatever works for you. Definitely not pressuring anyone to do anything. But
Yeah.
I know I get really intense. I get really excited about like my discoveries. But yeah, of course, whatever works for you. Got to listen to the intuition.
Yeah.
Um, what are facts? Like, are facts even a thing anymore? There's so much information out there. Um, but but yeah, I just thank you so much, Tim, for having me. I'm so glad we were able to do this. Thank you for bearing with me. I just realized I saw the mute button. I was like, I could have just muted myself when I was blowing my nose, but it's fine. It's bringing character to the podcast. But thank you so much for having me. You are amazing. I love you. I'm so glad we've stayed in touch. You are helping people in more ways than you know. And yeah, I'm just super grateful that we were able to connect and do this. And I'm excited to, I mean, you inspire me because I thought I need to have all this equipment and different things and like a special room to do a podcast. That's what I had at my old house, but we're just on our laptops chatting. So I'm inspired to get my podcast going finally and have you on there. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, 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 I've learned a lot on this tech journey. I'll say that, I've learned a lot on this tech journey, and yeah, it's just mostly about showing up, like the details, there's a lot of options. And again, it's just whatever options feel good to you. Uh, but trust me, I've listened to so many podcasts where it's like you can tell the elements are pretty raw, like the equipment is not like, refined, so to say. And I'll still listen because like the content's good. It's like I know some people love to refine the details until it's like the best possible audio it could ever be, and that's amazing too if people are passionate about that. But I've listened to pretty raw podcasts, and it's like I still listen because the content is really it's really I'm resonating with the content. I'll say that. So just more power to you for whatever you want to create, and thank you for being on here. Yeah, I'm so glad that we're still connected as well. And it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on here. And you've actually inspired me because I feel like in this moment, I feel like I want to like do like a whole episode about inner child work because a lot of what we talked about has to do with inner child responses, which is very much a part of our human dynamic, our multidimensional self. So like as we've been sitting here, I'm like, oh my gosh, this could totally like if we decided we were gonna sit here all day, like I feel like we could totally go into like a whole new conversation about inner child work because like it's just so much of what this with really living life in a holistic way has to do with. So anyways, you got me like like kind of kind of like, oh, I feel like I know what I want to do next. But yeah, thank you again so much for being on here, and thank you for doing the breath offerings that you do, because as I mentioned at the beginning, like my commitment to my breath is essentially number one at this point in my life after everything I've learned. So thank you for doing the work that you're doing, educating and facilitating safe spaces where people can more deeply connect with their breath. So thank you so much. I love you as well. And who knows, maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a beautiful Sunday.
Yes, thank you. Hope you do as well. And thanks to everyone who has watched live. And if you're listening to this as a replay or a podcast at some point in the future, just know that you can always generate a link to share this. Pretty much all the platforms that you share a link if this has served you or inspired you in some way. And if you're listening to this on a podcast platform or even something like YouTube, just know that a comment, a review, a like tells the platforms that this conversation is providing value, and the more interaction that it gets, the more those platforms tend to push it out and allow other people to discover it. So just know that there is a real way that you can help get conversations like this one out there in the world to potentially serve more people. So just know the option is there. And thanks again for watching. And until next time, this has been the Restore Yourself podcast. I am Timothy Waterman, and I've had the pleasure of speaking with Victoria Antonelli today. Thanks again, and see you next time.
Bye.